Chairman.
And God bless you.
I hope you have a wonderful day. Okay, we'll start the meeting. Thank you. Councillors, we've got a full complement of member councillors with the exception of Councillor PJ Young, who is still away. So if someone would like, I've received correspondence to explain. Councillor Pauline Young, if you'd like to move the apology. Seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? Against? Carried. And we welcome Councillor Baildon. Sorry?
Yeah,
Saturday seems to be the latest. We welcome Councillor Baildon Lumsden. No other leave of absence to deal with. Councillor, should we just move the confirmation of minutes? Someone like to move that? Moved by Councillor Gates, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? Against? Carried. Any conflict of interest declarations, councillors?
Not that I know of.
Okay, I'm sure someone will alert you if there was anything. We'll move on to the two start items that are on the agenda today. And we might unstar 6.2, Councillor Owen Jones?
And I'm happy to move 6.1.
Unstar 6.1 and
You're having a
6.2.
Are you acting as a proxy for the actual representative?
All right, councillors, we'll start with item 6.1.
Do you want a presentation, councillors, or just questions?
If we can get the team to come out on that one.
Since I made the walk over, may as well.
Partial third story,
Why is it called partial, Herman?
I don't know. I'm impartial.
Isn't a third story a third story?
One would have thought so.
Unless it's partial.
Well, why is it partial? Why do we always refer to it as partial?
Because it
Well, the
doesn't-
partial relates to the floor plate.
Yeah, it
Not
pops
the
up.
height.
It pops up
They
out
have
of...
a full third
Is it the
story?
full plate?
No, because then it would be
No.
a full story.
Is it because the full plate, because they leave one wall open and then build it a month after it's finished?
Can we not start until Councillor
like
Patterson's in the room?
Okay, let's have a quick presentation on 6.1.
Through the chair, good morning all. Agenda item 6.1 relates to a development permit for a material change of use, which is impact assessment for a multiple dwelling comprising 55 units, a food and drink outlet and a cafe. The subject site is located within the medium density residential zone and has a total area of 1,103 square metres. The subject site has an irregular shape and is currently improved by a two-storey commercial building, which includes built-to-boundary elements and at-grade car parking. The subject site is not encumbered by any easements or infrastructure. The subject site is a relatively unique site in the context of the Burleigh Heads locality. The site is a large, irregular allotment which only has one adjoining residential property, being the Burleigh Beach Tower to the north. All other boundaries of the site are adjoined by aspects of the public realm. These include the service road Tweed Street to the south and Rudd Park to the east. The key features surrounding the site include a number of residential towers to the north and along the foreshore area, the Burleigh Headland to the northeast, the Burleigh Ridge Line to the southwest, and the Burleigh Commercial Precinct to the northwest. The subject site is identified on the building height overlay map as having a code accessible height of 29 metres and a prescribed residential density of RD7, which equates to one bed per 25 square metres. The proposed development utilises the 50% uplift provisions and is therefore subject to impact assessment. As previously mentioned, the proposed development relates to the establishment of a multiple dwelling comprising 55 units, a food and drink outlet, which will be a cafe, and office space. The proposal has a building height of 13 storeys and 43.5 metres, a density of one bed per 10 square metres, site cover which ranges from 37% to 51%, and a total of 85 car parking spaces which are provided across 3 levels of basement. Each of the 3 levels of basement will include the same general configuration. However, all of the visitor and commercial spaces are limited to the uppermost level. The ground plane includes 2 commercial uses, a pedestrian connection referred to as Maui Lane, a residential lounge and lobby area, standing area for an MRV, waste storage and other back of house areas, and 2 shared commercial car parking spaces. A variety of landscaping treatments will also embellish the ground floor plane. The floor plans of levels 1 to 11 have the same general configuration, consisting of 5 units per floor. These are comprised of as a single 1-bedroom unit, 3 2-bedroom units, and a single 3-bedroom unit. Level 12 accommodates rooftop communal or open space facilities and mechanical plant and facility services. The rooftop elements are framed by landscaping treatments which assist in privacy protection and contribute to the visual appeal of the development. The hours of operation of the communal open space have been conditioned as recommended by the acoustic report. During the public notification period, a total of 6 pieces of correspondence were received, comprising 2 properly made submissions and 4 not properly made submissions. All pieces of correspondence were objecting to the proposal, with the key matters pertaining to building height, car parking and traffic generation. These matters have been appropriately addressed and considered throughout the assessment of this development. The key consideration of the proposed development relates to the building height. As the subject site is located within the medium density residential zone, the applicant has elected to utilise the 50% uplift provisions of the strategic framework. The proposed development has a total height of 13 stories and 43.5 metres, which represents an increase of 50% above the code assessable height. The proposal has been assessed against the requirements of specific outcome 9 of the urban neighbourhoods element and is considered to comply. The development provides an excellent standard of appearance through a high quality architectural outcome. The development achieves well-managed interfaces through landscaping treatments and appropriate setbacks and site cover. The design of the proposal is considered to represent a high-quality development which reflects the existing and emerging character of the immediate locale. Potential privacy concerns are managed through the utilisation of landscaping buffers, architectural screening, building orientation, and appropriate separation distances. City officers recommend the application be approved, subject to conditions. Thank you, and are there any questions?
Councillors, questions? Councillor Forster.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. I think it's a great design outcome, good utilisation of the site. I just had some questions, though, pertaining to the relationship of the development and, is it Rudd Park next door? Can city officers advise whether the development proposes to provide access from the building directly into Rudd Park by way of gate, fence, path?
Through the chair, there is a pedestrian access which goes through the building at the ground floor, referred to as Maui Lane. I'll just get that up on the screen for you. Just the ground floor plan here. So Maui Lane is a pedestrian connection to the park. All works will be within the site and the proposed pedestrian access is open.
Ties in, as you'll see, to the right-hand side of that image to an existing footpath that's in Rudd Park.
Yeah. So can city officers advise, if I were to use that existing footpath at the moment, could I access Tweed Street by cutting across the site?
Through the chair, currently going through the site, there is no connection. You have to go around the outside of the site.
So if I have a look at that diagram, there's an existing footpath, right, that seems or appears to connect to Maui Lane. What's the purpose of that connection to boundary, if not to bring people through the existing site?
Do you want to just bring the, have you got an aerial that shows the existing? So basically, because of where the caravan park hugs the boundary of this property, there is only a very narrow, so that the footpath orientates immediately adjacent to the boundary and then hugs it, because at that point you then have the caravan park to the side.
Right. And how wide is that footpath? Do we know?
Through the chair, the existing
The
footpath?
existing footpath along the, sorry, councillor?
1562.
But is that the width of the existing footpath along its entire length? Or does it become narrower?
It does become narrower as it approaches Tweed Street,
Yes.
but it does, yeah, widen as it goes into the park, Rudd Park.
Okay. And when you follow the footpath, sorry, because I'm not a Burleigh local as much as it's my local beach, when you follow the footpath right to its conclusion, where do you arrive?
Gold Coast.
The footpath continues north through the park to the pavilion.
Sorry, the other way.
South, it connects to the pedestrian path which extends along the Gold Coast Highway.
So
So it lands at the moment about where that little speech bubble thing is pointing to.
okay. And could city officers maybe provide a comment around the pedestrian experience? So say, for instance, I was not an owner and not a visitor to this complex and I've been recreating at Rudd Park. Say I wanted to access the future nearby heavy light rail station, right? And I take that footpath, right? How would I navigate from the end of that footpath where it meets the Gold Coast Highway to the light rail station?
Through the chair, there is a footpath which extends along the frontage of the site, which will be maintained throughout the development. And that will eventually connect through to the light rail terminus out the front of the old Burleigh Theatre Arcade.
All right, so there will be a footpath along the frontage of the building?
Correct.
Right. And the connection, I merely ask because for me, the easiest and best way of dealing with this would be to have access from Rudd Park through Maui Lane to the footpath to the station rather than forcing everybody down to the,
Yeah,
so it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
it's
yeah.
proposed, yes.
Okay,
correct.
so it's a far better pedestrian outcome for the public.
Most definitely.
Well, fantastic. That's a really, really good outcome. My next, well, I think it's important because, you know, for such a, what's what I'm looking for a part of the Gold Coast where people like that pedestrian experience and being able to enjoy the headland, yeah. This is actually really great on part of the developer to invite the public to enter their private property to enjoy amenity. It's a good integration. Now, second question on Rudd Park. My understanding is that in earlier developments nearby, there's been some construction compounds set up in that park. Is it Rudd Park? Mm-hmm. Do city officers know whether this particular proponent will need a similar arrangement to support the construction of their development at Burleigh?
Through the chair, the site is considered large enough to accommodate the construction requirements of the development. There is a construction management plan also conditioned as part of this recommendation. This permit does not permit any works within Rudd Park. That's handled through a separate application, which would require the consent of Parks and Recreational Services.
So is it possible, through you, Mr Chairman, to the Director, so if we can rely on the advice from city officers that the site is sufficiently large to contain construction wholly on site, would it be reasonable for us to make that an explicit condition of the development approval?
Through you, Mr Chair, Councillor Vorster, I think we'd probably want to look at that in between now and full council and work with the applicant just to double check that. Normally it is something, Bowden's right, that we would look at with the construction management plan with our colleagues at Parks and Rec Services, but we're happy to look at that between now and full council.
So, Mr Chairman, I think that's very important because there's a lot of pressure, I think, on the open space at Burleigh, and if we've got an opportunity to contain construction on site, a very large site, I think we need to be taking steps to make that a condition of approval, if only to provide some direction to city officers when they may consider a future permit application to understand what council's position is, which is that development should be contained on private property as far as possible. Thank you.
So it's obviously a separate body of work, but Alicia, do you want to just provide an update on what is happening around the use of public parks and roads at the moment, the review, yeah.
So through you, Mr Chair, I don't think I've been too involved in that. I know that's being led by our colleagues in lifestyle and communities at the moment. Our areas obviously we take the construction management plans in, and I think there's been a couple of pieces of work between transport infrastructure, lifestyle and communities and our directorate as well. So. That's all right. I can get an update, but I know that it's happening, and we've certainly provided feedback through that process as well.
Councillor Pauline Young, then Councillor Hamill.
And just to address, and through the chair, just to address that, I had a meeting with Margaret Barrett yesterday, and I actually, as the former representative, did raise that for that site, and she is aware of it. And as far as her reassurance was at the time, is that they were going to contain it within the site. Was a question that I raised because McNab were in Rudd Park, and her understanding was, from the information that she had, that they were containing it in the site. Because I did raise the fact that with what's happening in that area, there will be a lot of demand on our public domain, and she was already very across it.
So I think the general vibe about that review is that use of parks would be an absolute last resort.
Yeah.
Which is very encouraging. I suppose I always like taking the opportunity to set a high benchmark at the approval stage.
And the only other question I had, which was through yourself to Bowden, was, and a great presentation, thank you, is the distance between Burleigh Beach Tower and the facade of this building. I thought it was 17, but I saw parts said 17 and parts said.
Sorry. Through the chair, the proposed development maintains a minimum separation distance of 17 metres to the nearest tower, being the Burleigh Beach Tower. It's also noted that that is the rear portion of the Burleigh Beach Tower, with the primary viewpoints of that tower orientated towards the ocean.
Could we flick back to one of the last slides showing the renders? That'll do there. So,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'm interested in, so there's quite a significant amount of planter boxes on this building on both frontages, and then a lot of planter boxes up on the top of the building as well. Could officers clarify for me, are the planter boxes part of private property with the units, or are they all common property to be maintained by the body corporate?
Through the chair, the planter boxes which are integrated into the facade are part of a body corporate arrangement, so they'll be managed by private, the body corporate, sorry.
Right, and that's all of them, so there's no planter boxes and therefore no vertical gardens and this that have to be managed by private owners?
No, the burden will be on the body corporate to maintain these landscaping planters.
Cool.
And just through the chair, condition 16 requires the community management statement, the CMS, to incorporate all the maintenance of the planter boxes.
Thank you, Chair. The pedestrian access through the Maui Lane, is there an access easement or anything along those lines that's envisaged for that?
Through the chair, there is no access easement proposed for that laneway. However, it has been proposed to remain open. Any closure of that laneway would require further consideration by city officers. It also should be noted that that pedestrian access isn't relied upon for access to Rudd Park. There will always be the additional pedestrian access which extends along the eastern boundary of the site.
So what prevents a future body corporate in 10 years' time deciding that it is just going to put up a gate, for example, overnight to prevent access?
Through the chair, that would be in contravention with the stamped approved plans which show that the pathway is open. We also do have a condition 18, which talks to boundary fencing along that aspect to remain 50% open and limit the height to 1.8 metres. So we do still have casual surveillance through that aspect of the development.
And is there any way that we can set a higher benchmark in that space to provide the body corporate needs to contact the council before they do any further works?
So through the chair, if the body corporate were to put a gate across to, I guess, close the access, they would need to come back to council to seek a change to the application because we've stamped approve the plans.
Yeah.
And we would take that into further consideration at that point in time.
Yeah, and it's not something that I imagine is going to happen maybe immediately, but I think we've all seen examples where some body corporates get excited 5-10 years down the track, and an access easement would be potentially one mechanism of preventing that.
Through you, Mr Chair, we can, when we're looking at the queries for Councillor Vorster, we can look at a condition in that space as well between now and full council.
So just on that, Councillor Jones, so how is it that we determine on what will be the stamped plans that actually is open at that point?
Through the chair, there is just no gate signified on any of the ground floor plans.
Yeah, okay. So I think maybe if we can work on that between now and full council.
And I think it's the intent of the design that it remain open.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily, it should offend anybody, but I think it's one way of ensuring that continues in perpetuity. So.
Next question.
Oh, I didn't have any other questions.
Oh, okay. Any other questions, Councillor Pauline?
Thanks, Chair. And I think I did quickly have this conversation yesterday with Sean, but it's with all the work that Councillor McDonald and I have done with the light rail corridor and the pedestrian access, and that eventually at, I believe, the completion of the light rail, that footpath there won't be 3 metres wide anymore in Rudd Park. It'll be between 4 and 5 metres, and that they are investigating shaving off like a metre or so off of the edge of the tourist park, and they will have additional spaces at the front going into. So it'll take it's either a 4 or 5 metre path that will join into, go south into that southern path, exclusive of what's shown here on the plans as well. So there's I've got some plans of it and things like that through the CRG, and yeah, so it will be open all the way through.
So I'm happy to move it.
Moved by Councillor Owen Jones, seconded by Councillor Pauline Young. Councillor Owen Jones, do you want to speak to it?
No, I think it's an interesting floor plate for a difficult site, and I think that they've done a good job.
Yeah.
Happy? All right, we'll take the vote. All in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously, and we welcome Councillor Patterson this morning. Thanks for joining us. Maybe we'll just flick through 3 slides. I think it would be helpful if you ask the questions as the relevant thing is on the screen. It's I think if I'm counting correctly, there's 1 per townhouse. All right, far away. Are we doing a presentation? Yes, if that's okay. Yeah, of course. Now, we did say that you had 3 slides, but I'll give you some leeway on that. You might need more.
I got 7, is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. Through you, Mr Chair, this presentation is regarding a code accessible application at 9 to 11 Nelson Avenue, Hope Island, where the applicant seeks to establish a multiple dwelling of 9 units. The subject site is 1,616 square metres in size and includes a 40.2 metre frontage to Nelson Avenue. The site resides within the medium density residential zone. The city plan affords the site a 3-storey and 15-metre building height designation and a residential density of 1 dwelling per 400 square metres. The subject site is north of Banksia Park North, the Coomera River and the Hope Island Public Boardwalk. Anchorage Apartments are adjacent to the site to the west. The proposed development includes a total of 9 units, including 4 units within the frontage of the site and 5 units along the rear of the site. The proposed development includes 3 storeys with a total building height of 10.8 metres. The proposed development is appropriately set back from all property boundaries and includes a total site cover of 36%. Landscaping is provided throughout, as well as the requirement for the installation of a street tree. Each unit is afforded 3 bedrooms, and the proposed development results in a residential density of 1 dwelling per 179.5 square metres. The assessment determined that the proposed development provides an appropriate scale and intensity for the locality. As demonstrated on the screen, the proposed residential density is considered consistent with the existing and approved intensity within the surrounding locality. The proposed development includes private open space on the ground floor and on level 1 through a balcony for each unit, with an area ranging from 35.5 square metres to 67.4 square metres. Whilst the proposed development does not include communal open space, the subject site is located within 400 metres walking distance to a number of recreational opportunities, as demonstrated on the screen. Therefore, following a detailed assessment, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions.
Okay,
Is there any
thank you.
questions?
Yeah. Do you just want to bring up a floor plan slide or something like that for us?
No.
That, yeah. Oh, we've got heaps. Okay, just
There.
maybe that for starters.
Yep.
Councillor Goetz?
Sorry, Chairman, I just had a query about the open space. Was there no requirement in the scheme, regardless of where it's located, that there be some private open space within the site itself?
Through the chair, the subject site does provide private open space. Do you mean communal open space?
Communal open, sorry, communal.
Yeah. So there is a requirement for communal open space. However, we have assessed it against the overall outcomes and determined that it is appropriate for the way it provides private open space and the recreational opportunities within the locality.
How much was required?
Through the chair, the acceptable outcome requires 405 square metres of
Okay,
communal
thank you.
open space.
Councillor Owen Jones?
Thank you. So I had, firstly, thanks for bringing it to committee. I appreciate that it's code accessible and appreciate that the applicant has allowed an extension of time for it to come to committee. One of the issues that I had was the Hope Island has a whole lot of things going on, and this particular street, Nelson Avenue, is part of what I'd like to refer to as the old Hope Island, or the original Boykenbull estate, and Nelson Avenue in particular is subject to regular inundation, particularly through spring tides, not dissimilar to other parts of the city, and I think there's some sections in Palm Beach, Budds Beach, so effectively from time to time this street is subject to flooding, and it was a concern of mine that we were approving 9 somethings in an area where we know that it's going to be subject to flooding. So do we have a flood map for any of your slides?
Through the chair, no, sorry, I don't have a flood map.
So effectively, all of the property is subject to flooding in a major flood event, and that in part is why they've designed the garages to be on the ground floor, including the storage room, and the storage room is at the flood level or plus the 300.
Through the chair, the storage room is at flood level.
Yeah. So in theory, according to these plans, residents have the ability, which is almost a standard size or a little bit bigger than a standard size bedroom. And the storage room also benefits at the moment from a shower and a bathroom. And I would be interested in officers' views on whether or not they explored removing the bathroom and the shower under the theory that it might be surplus to the needs of a storage room.
Through the chair, no, we didn't. It is noted and very difficult to see there that the storage room has only a 1.2 metre high wall adjacent to the double car garage, so we didn't consider it could be converted to a bedroom. Notwithstanding, we've also included a condition of approval stating that it cannot be transformed into a bedroom at any point in time.
And through today's process, would we be able to make a decision to remove the bathroom and the shower?
Through the chair, if you felt that necessary, then yes, we could.
So in my view, we should remove the bathroom and the shower because I think it just encourages the use of that particular room for things other than storage. And even storage is, in the event of a biblical flood greater than the mapping for the Q100 event, that storage facility will go underwater. And so I think that it's beholden on us to do as much as we can to remove the temptation of people to make it habitable. But do we have the ability to determine in the development application assessment stage what type of materials could be used for construction? So, for example, in the storage room, could we condition that the materials used might be something like an open grate steel floor?
Through you, Mr Chair, it gets very difficult at a planning level. We have to be cognizant that this application will go through a development permit for building works where a private certifier will ensure that it complies with the building code and Australian standards in relation to those sort of matters. In terms of a condition about walls maybe being non-perishable materials, I believe that that is reasonable considering it is in the flood overlay area. I would question whether a floor of the materials that you suggested are needed. I think a tiled floor would be suffice.
Okay. So in regards to the walls and all services, I was interested in a condition that basically prevented it from being gyprock, under the theory that what I didn't want to see is the council approve something ultimately because we have to, and then within 12 months of it being constructed, there being images of gyprock being pulled out of a brand new construction because it's been flooded. So fundamentally, under the Hope Island local area plan and the 2003 master planning, this site was always envisaged for development and regardless of the flooding. Is that right, Roger?
Through you, yes, through the chair, yes, correct.
Yeah. So I think today I'm in the uncomfortable position where I don't think it's available to us to refuse the application because of flooding, but I think that we should endeavour to do everything possible to make sure that future owners and owners after the original owners are very aware of the fact that that garage area will be subject to a Q100 event. And so the plan provides for effectively 9 units with 18 cars, all of which will be potentially subject to flooding. So the habitable areas are up in level 1 and 2. I can appreciate the fact that the plan is effectively for people to shelter in place, but I think that we need to have conditions that make it abundantly clear for the first purchaser and also future purchasers that this property is subject to that type of flooding. And I appreciate the officers have required it to be noted on the rates notice and whatnot. I think that we should go just that little bit further and actually have visual cues for anybody inspecting the property. So my thoughts were that we needed an external flood gauge and that we also needed to make sure that there was clear signage inside all of the garages indicating what the flooding will occur, and that none of the materials used below the known flood level should be anything other than something that will withstand a flood, and that all services, electrical and other, be above that 2.4. I'm assuming 2.4 RL. Yeah.
Through the chair, so just on that question about the electrical, is the laundry above that level?
Through the chair, the laundry is at the flood level, at the same height as the storeroom. So it's not a habitable room. It doesn't have to have the 300 mil freeboard.
The electrical will logically be above the 2.4 metre mark. So the floor is 2.1, so they won't be able to have what I'm suggesting is they can't have ground floor electrical power points. So it all has to be effectively at knee or hip height, so that when something does come through, it doesn't. It's not. It isn't going to require reconstruction of the ground floor. Yep. So, Mr. Chair, I also had some concerns in regards to making sure there's an established tree in front of the property, and so officers have got a condition in regards to effectively an arborist needing to be involved and supervised and making sure that that tree is protected. And then the applicant, in regards to the communal open space, notes the proximity to, I'm going to say, Banksia Park North and Sands Park. Having said that, there is no footpath at the moment that links to that community open space. So I'd be interested in a condition for a footpath that not only in front of the applicant's property, but one that links south to the existing council footpath, which currently terminates at the edge of the Anchorage approval, which is beside Banksia Park North. There's probably a little bit of design work that would need to go through Parks and Rec in regards to what a logical connector might look like, but I'd be interested in a condition that required the establishment of a footpath that then linked the community space to this approval.
Councillor Jones, having heard the question from Councillor Gates about communal open space being dispensed with entirely, I think it's reasonable that if they're relying on nearby recreational areas, that they make the connection. So, have you finished questions
I have,
now?
thank you.
Councillor Vorster, then Councillor Hamill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Not that I'm providing direction whatsoever to city officers, but I think Councillor Owen Jones has made some very, very good points around assisting developers to produce product that is resilient to natural disaster, because generally we've an obligation to make sure that future residents of the city aren't exposed to risk when making development approval decisions. I just noted that the Queensland Reconstruction Authority provided or produced a guideline. It's called the Flood Resilient Building Guidance for Queensland Homes. That document was produced together with Lockyer Valley, Somerset, Ipswich and City of Brisbane, and they actually provide these great cross-sections of how storage rooms can be constructed to address flooding risk. And that involves, for example, mandating that the flooring isn't tiled but concrete, just bare concrete that's sealed, and that there is no fixed storage on walls, for example, and that there's exposed building blocks at the lowest levels, and that all power points are extremely high in these storage spaces. So I think if city officers were looking for a defensible set of conditions, they could potentially have regard to this guideline that was produced together with the Queensland government. It may be completely defensible for us to intervene, I'm not going to say harshly, but intervene specifically to make sure we get a good outcome that protects the interests of the developer, because they'll have a product that can be sold reliably, but also it protects future residents who might be exposed to avoidable risk.
Mr. Chairman, it's kind of on the back of Councillor Vorster's question a little bit, but have we ever, anywhere else in the city, or investigated, like on this one, the installation of a mechanical flood barrier in front of the garage door as part of the development conditions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are some floodgates around the city, particularly in Surfers Paradise for high-rise developments, but not for this scale development. It is actually within the medium risk, so you're allowed up to 600 mil inundation. So the DFL is 2.4 and the garage level is 1.8, so they're bang on the 600 mil threshold. So we don't think there's a need to install any floodgates or barriers, because they are actually complying with their medium hazard risk.
Answered.
So Councillor Jones, did you want to turn to the draft conditions that you've got?
I'd like to move it, but uncomfortably. So And I do it because I don't think we have the option of refusing it, but I think that, and I think a refusal would be, I don't think it's an option because ultimately we have a plan that requires applicants to have acceptable solutions, and there's a management plan that's been put in place. So we could just waste a whole lot of time and effort trying to refuse it for only to have it overturned. But I am interested in making sure those couple of things that I identified help get us a better outcome. And I note that there's 2 existing dwellings there already that have been there for a long period of time. There are some houses in that particular pocket. There's about 80 houses from memory, and there's some houses that have been there for over 70 years. So it's a difficult one, but I think it's beholden on us to come up with a bit of tighter recommendations. So I spoke to the officers a couple of days ago, and they've provided some words around a couple of those sections. So we're just going down in the order of, so the ground floor was about the materials. Councillor Vorster's reference to, what was it called, Councillor Vorster? The flood resilience guidance. The flood resilient building guidance for Queensland homes. So it may very well be, Roger, that we add after 2.4M words along the lines of in accordance with the flood resilient building guidance for Queensland homes publication. And that might need.
There's another sentence at the end of that. You mean?
Yeah.
So just put the AHD back up there in the closed bracket. And then,
The designated flood level signage should be placed adjacent to the visitor car park. So that, in my mind, is effectively a flood gauge, not dissimilar to what we see on our public roads, where we identify areas that we know is subject to flooding and we put a gauge that shows 1-2 metres. And in my mind, that is a useful trigger for anybody that might be inspecting the property in 5 or 10 years' time to be very aware that there might be a reason why there's a flood gauge there, prior to them signing and having the solicitors tell them that it's on the rates notice. And then internally, I think that each of the garage walls need to identify that it's subject to flooding and potentially what that flood line looks like. If we could go down to the next. So the vegetation management was about ensuring the existing mature tree was protected during construction. The next one was the footpath, which links the frontage of the Nelson Avenue property through to the existing council footpath adjacent to the Anchorage property. So I had, including 13 Nelson Avenue, which is a property to the immediate south of this property, and the City of Gold Coast Park Reserve, known as Banksia Park North. So we might add those words. And it might just be
So just on that one, do you want to add connecting to the canal fronting boardwalk?
If you think that it makes it
should.
clearer. So the first line of the proposed condition talks about it being obtain operational works approval for the design and construction following prior to commencement. So if you think that we should actually reference it, yeah.
Name where it should connect to.
So just at the end of the next paragraph down, connecting to.
Like that.
Channel.
Anyway, the officers can tidy that up. Okay.
So, yeah, so the supervision of works pre-start. So I think that picks up the tree. And then what we haven't in any of these words is the removal of the bathroom and which I'm assuming is the.
So I think we need probably an amended plans condition.
Amendment to plans.
Which, did we have any amended plans conditions in this? I didn't look.
Through the chair, no, we didn't.
Okay. So might just need to add an amended plans condition.
So I don't know if the guidelines allow for a bathroom or a shower. I just don't think it's required. It's surplus to the storage room. Yeah. Yeah. Just the amended plan, a partial ones. The amended plans reflecting the building materials in accordance with.
Through the chair, can I just clarify, sorry, are we converting that to extra storage area or what will that look like? Yep, yep.
Because I've also.
Sorry, Chair, is it going to have a ceiling height of 1.2 like the storage room?
Well, that 1.2 is a sort of a dwarf wall separating the garage from the storage room. So there is a solid wall adjacent to the stairwell. So it is a more of an enclosed space.
Sorry, can you just, might need to have that explained. But so two things that I thought we should do, which I've just given the words, but that the ground floor bathrooms be removed for lots 1 to 9.
Yep.
And secondly, that the glass sliding door, seems to be a glass sliding door if I'm reading the plans correctly, to the facade, I think should also be removed, because that's a funny thing to have facing a storage room at the front of your house. So I would prefer that there was no pedestrian access to that area from the front, and that we make it a window or something.
But that'll help secure the items being stored.
It will, because they will less likely break the glass and float away in the event of a significant weather event. So the two paragraphs that I think we should say are the removal of the bathrooms and the removal of the sliding glass door to the front facade to be replaced with a window or something like that.
And a window above the 2.4. So 2.4 is the flood level.
Probably, but I mean, that can be in accordance with the design guidelines.
Excuse me, Chair, given Councillor Forster mentioned that the guidelines, whatever those guidelines are, spoke about the floor.
Yeah, the Queensland Reconstruction Authority building resilience thing. I mean, there's a cross-section that shows that it should just have a polished concrete floor.
For Councillor Patterson, I think that's being picked up in this.
It is,
in
okay.
these words that is being prepared for the amending drawings. So the materials will reflect that.
That's what I'm understanding.
Which to me makes sense, because there's a body of work the state government's done in regards to other areas of the state that is susceptible to flooding, and we should lean into that. And particularly, if we've got to do it, we may as well.
Yeah.
It's not a ceiling height, it's just the height of a wall separating the garage from the storage area. It's noted on the plans as a dwarf wall, 1.2 high. Yep.
I said it. A door.
That's a reference to the 1.7 wall. You could dump that, they probably use it as a balance beam. We can do this.
Yeah.
I think you're right though. You do know what you have to do. The funny thing is, I suspect that beer's going to be back by about 3:30 this afternoon. Yeah. This was clean shaven last night. It's come back pretty quick. Alright, so councillors, we're just going to try and get close and then do a bit of tightening up between our four councillors.
So, Mr Chairman, when I moved to the goal,
Yeah, so we have a storage area that was completely
flooded.
permeable. You know, you could only keep the surfboards in there or whatever. They didn't have enclosed walls.
There was a huge hoo-ha over that at Breville at the time, and I remember Sue Robbins, the former councillor, coming to a council meeting with a floodgate over the way that they were to be approved, because we all knew that when I wasn't on the council before mine.
So I think the only two surviving councillors with planning knowledge from that far back is councillor.
Need the material.
Okay, councillors, so Councillor Owen Jones, if you're happy to adopt in those workshopped conditions, then I'm happy for you to move that. As a former representative of the area, I will second you and assist in that process. I know. Did you want to speak to it, Councillor Owen Jones? Or you're right.
I need to say that it is code accessible. It wasn't subject to public advertising. I appreciate that the officers may not have necessarily thought that it would come to council and that it could be done under delegation. It does sit in the original part of Boykenbull, and I was very cognizant of the fact that there will be a fair few of the residents in Boykenbull that'll be disappointed to see this side of Nelson Avenue being constructed. But given the fact that the anchorage is immediately behind it, it does make some sense in regards to that grading of the development from the street up to the existing anchorage buildings. There is nothing that we can do in regards to preventing stormwater coming onto Nelson Avenue. And what we can do is try to make those 9 new dwellings as resilient as possible. And what we have, I think, to make sure that we really do is make sure any future purchasers of the property are very, very aware of the fact that this is one of 2 spots in Hope Island which will be subject to flooding in the event of a Q100 event. All of the new part of Hope Island is all of the residents have been constructed so that they are 300 mil above the Q100 event, but this is a bit of a unique situation. There are only the 7 properties on Nelson Avenue that will be able to take advantage of this part of the city plan. So I don't want to, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have to move it, but I think I'm far better off moving it with those changes than pretend. No, but it is what it is. But as in, I just can't see how we can refuse it and be successful in that course.
All right, thanks, councillors. We'll take the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. All right, are there any other items of general business? Otherwise, we will... Well, the most important thing is that I wasn't looking at you. Yeah, it's like, So, councillors, we'll close the meeting. It's 10:03 a.m. Thank you for your attendance.